Hi, welcome to Business Influencers. I'm your host, Chris Salem. Hope everyone is having a great week. We want to welcome any new listeners that are new to Business Influencers. You found us here at the Tal Radio platform. That is an acronym for Touch a Life Foundation. We've been on the platform now for 4 years since we started Tal Radio. So we've been here since the beginning, and we want to thank you existing listeners for being with us since that time. And again, for any new listeners, you can not only listen to us here at talradio.org, but also on Spotify, Apple, and then also our video portion of the show on YouTube. So feel free to subscribe to all 4 areas. That way you can tune in anytime to whatever you feel is best for information that can help raise you personally or your business's level of influence to a whole new level to attract more ideas, buy-ins, sales, whatever that may mean to you. Today's show is being brought to you today by Alumni Direct. Alumni Direct is a new social media community platform dedicated to bringing alumni together from all different generational types and an opportunity to meet new people for the first time. Now, it is a membership program taking out all the noise out of social media. You get to generate genuine and authentic relationships with the people you choose to interact with. If you'd like some more information about Alumni Direct, check them out at alumnidirect.com. That's alumnidirect.com. Well, we got another great show today. We're going to be talking about the Empathic Leader, and you're going to learn how you can utilize emotional intelligence to transform your leadership. That could be for better profit, productivity, and innovation. And I am so excited. This is someone that has been on another show of mine, and she's not only been on once, but twice. And her name is Dr. Melissa Robinson Winemiller, and a little bit about her before we start, because I am just so excited to have her on the show. She is an author, TEDx talk speaker, leadership coach, and the host of the Empathic Leader podcast. Motivated by personal experience and a deep love of learning, she has conducted extensive research into the role of empathy in effective leadership through the lens of emotional intelligence. Her groundbreaking findings and compelling stage presence have inspired audiences around the world, including the TEDx stage in institutions such as Yale University, Columbia University, Northwestern University, and she has also spoken at Oxford and Cambridge universities and written for LA Weekly, Deadline News UK, the San Francisco Post, Authority Magazine, among many, many others. And she is on a mission to transform the way we connect and understand one another within organizations by applying strategic, actionable empathy to build more connected, human-centered workplaces and communities. And with more titles currently in development, she continues her work to redefine what leadership is through the power of empathy and emotional intelligence. And without further ado, we welcome Dr. Melissa Robinson Winemiller to the show. Dr. Melissa, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Chris. Thank you so much for having me again. I really appreciate being here.
Yes. Well, we love you. We love your message, and we want the listeners of Business Influencers to be inspired about, how you see leadership evolving or continue to evolve through the emotional intelligence as a foundation. And what are the principles behind becoming an empathic leader? So let's talk a little bit about what empathy is. I mean, people obviously know what it is, or at least they think they know what it is. But if you could kind of share your insights and how this applies to leadership.
Yeah, and I actually appreciate that question because there's a lot of myths out there that really get in the way, I mean, like anything, bad information is almost worse than no information.
That's true.
So there's this idea that empathy is just about feeling, that it's I feel what you feel. And that's part of it. But there's actually 43 different definitions of empathy. And the feeling one is only one. If we really want to get down to brass tacks, empathy is about perspective taking. And you can take perspective of what the other person thinks or feels or how they're in their situation or their life through feeling. But you can do it cognitively by logically understanding it. You can do it somatically, which means you actually physically feel in your body how they feel. There's like all sorts of ways to do this. So when we're talking business and leadership, I mean, this is one of the most important things we can do, whether it's for customers or employees or the board of directors or whoever, is to actually understand that perspective of the other person through their eyes, not through your eyes, through their eyes.
So true. And like I said, especially in the world we live in today, even in many organizations, well, everyone's got an opinion, everyone has a perspective, a belief, but we can't always just see it from our lens. We have to be able to see it from the way other people. It doesn't mean you have to agree on everything or even like all of it. It's just that where can we find a happy medium where everybody, whoever's involved, that we can kind of look at things for what it is, not what we think it should be. I love that approach, what you shared. Share, those organizations that, instead of checking a box off, right? I think now the era of checking the box is over. And now it's like, we got to implement. We have to implement this process. If we're going to have some success in retention, getting more out of people, higher engagement, solving challenges faster and creating solutions, we have to look at an approach long-term that's going to better service. And what better way than through the concept of empathy? Can you share some insights that you feel where organizations not trying to do everything all at once, where they can start?
Yeah, well, definitely it starts at the top. I mean, we know that, right? Culture drips down from the top. It's like Drucker said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And it's as true now as it ever was. So the trick is the people at the top have to understand this isn't just something we're going to put in our mission, vision, and values. We're not just going to, stick it in these statements because it sounds good and it's kind of trendy. They have to actually walk the talk, taking the perspective of the other, understanding the perspective of the other, because otherwise they just kind of come off as hypocritical. Yeah. I come from a musical background, so that's still just kind of my worldview. And the way I see it, these leaders are always on stage, which means someone is always watching, even if they don't think they are. So the very first thing that they can do is actually walk the talk and live up to what they're talking about.
And I love what you just said, because empathy is not like, sympathy where hey, something is going to do it for you. No, empathy is, I'm responsible for me. So I'm going to show up every day, fill my cup up, and lead by example, utilize resources to help you do the same for yourself.
Yeah.
So,
and I think you made a fantastic point too about filling your cup up, because that's one of the things I talk about is self-empathy. Because if you can't have it for yourself, you are never going to have it for anybody else.
Absolutely.
So perfect point. Thank you.
share with that, because sometimes, some leaders, will, like you said, are they really walking the talk? They say things, but then their actions, their behavior, their attitude, their emotions and how they react versus respond to difficult situations or people contradict what they're saying. So what can they be doing to make that congruent, more in alliance? How could they be filling up their cups?
Yeah. Well, it really starts with that self-empathy, because if we're talking about perspective taking, right, it's about understanding where you're coming from, what you're doing, and being willing to give yourself compassion as needed. Because these leaders, they're very motivated. They're very highly self-actualized. They're in those positions because they're gunners. That's where they want to be. But in the process, they tend to lose themselves, which is why you end up with 35% burnout rates for leaders, and all of the addiction issues and the family issues and all of the other things that weigh so heavily on these leaders. They haven't taken the time to actually observe themselves, reflect on what's going on, build that self-awareness, how their actions interact with the rest of the world, so that then they can start learning to give it to other people.
Yeah, so true. I love it. And it starts at the top. Now, what would you recommend? I mean, it'd be great if, where those organizations start from the top. But let's just say, for whatever reason, it ain't happening yet in somebody's organization. The top just seems, they don't get it. Could that doesn't mean that has to stop that person for waiting for something to happen outside of their control. They, regardless of their title, they can at least do something for themselves to at least start with where level they're at in terms of the people they're interacting with on a daily basis.
Absolutely. And that's where I talk about the 4 steps to self-empathy. So, and the first one is self-observation, being able to step back and see what you're doing, but do it without judgment. Because empathy and judgment cannot exist in the same place. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's you or it's somebody else. So you have to be able to be critical, not caring, which means you're critiquing, you're looking for patterns, you're crunching the data like a computer, but you're not putting emotional value on it. Once you observe, you move to self-reflection, which means you turn the lens inward and you say, well, why did I do that? Why does that guy trigger me? Why did I give all great reviews on these employee engagement scores instead of actually helping people to rise up and do better? After the reflection is self-awareness, where you turn the lens outward and you say, these are my actions and how they show up in the world. I blew up in that meeting because that guy triggered me, but unfortunately what it did was shut down everybody, and that entire room with all of its innovation and productivity, morale, now it's out the window, And then the 4th step is self-compassion, being able to say, yeah, you know what, I did that. And I did it because of this. And in the moment, that's what happened. But now I need to go back and apologize. I need to mend some fences, and I can do better next time. So now you're starting to actually have that perspective within yourself of why you're doing these things, how you can do it better, how you can give yourself that empathy. And now you can start to bring it out into the world.
And I love it. And how important is now when let's say you're doing this for yourself, regardless of title, how important is it to be consistent in not just once in a while, but every day, why that's important and what impact that could have on other people, through your example of resourcefulness.
You nailed it, because it is a practice and not a performance.
I like that. It is. It's a It's not like, hey, I'm going to look the part when the most important people to me are viewing me, and then I'm going to be completely the opposite when they turn their cheek somewhere else.
Yes, exactly. And a practice is, it's like practicing basketball or an instrument or a language. You practice it every day and every day and every day. And it might only be for a few minutes every day, but you are committed to hit that every single day.
Every day, Exactly. It's like shooting free throws. You're going to increase your percentages of hitting your free throws. Well, a lot of times people are shooting free throws every day on the court, and just, get that rhythm and that consistency pays off. No doubt about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's how you build habits. Pretty soon it just becomes the status quo. Even if it didn't start that way, eventually that's where it's at.
Yeah, so true. I love it. What could be some other things that you could share with us with the empathic leader concept that can kind of now get leaders to see the bigger picture? This isn't all about, hey, we're going to be all happy. We're all going to be high-fiving each other and hugging each other, and we're going to collaborate. Yeah, that's all great stuff. And it is. And it should be that way. You got to have fun. People don't want to be like, oh, I got to come into this place again today. But we understand that there are KPIs. We understand that there's, metrics to be met. This is where sometimes I think leaders just don't put 2 and 2 together. Long-term, how it impacts the bottom line.
Absolutely. I think the first thing to understand is that having empathy does not mean you don't have boundaries. People get this idea that it's this fluffy puppies and rainbows thing, and that's not what it is. And I actually think it kind of splits that line between nice and kind. Nice is something we do as a society so that we can interact. It's social lubricant. It's what makes things easier. It's like having manners, and unfortunately, that doesn't always mean we do the hard things that would be in the best interest of ourselves or our organization or other people. Kind means you're actually doing the best thing for those people, for yourself, for the organization, but it's not always nice. And empathy is always kind, but it's not always nice.
True, I love that. It's kind of like, I'm a big sports guy, and like football, and you may get a coach that, you may not even like the guy, but you respect him because he's always doing things that are looking to serve you to get better as a player. You may not like it, but it's always with the intent to make you better.
Yeah. And I would absolutely say that's empathy, because he's taking your perspective and saying, this is what we can do to make you better. This is what we can do to make us better. And yeah, maybe you're not going to like it. And I'm going to do some stuff that's going to, make you put my up on a dartboard.
Morning, but
yeah, but it's kind. He's doing the right thing for the organization, for the team, for the other person. So that's absolutely empathy.
Yeah. It's so true. And like, when you think about it, like you got people that are, coming into work, there's higher retention. So now you're not constantly churning and bringing new people in. People are less likely to call out sick or come in late. They look forward to getting together. They're contributing in team huddles. How can that not impact the bottom line?
Oh, absolutely. Both within and outside the organization.
Yeah.
I mean, let me give a quick example here with someone. This just came up this week. It's someone I was working with. He had to let someone go. And this guy this director, it's hard to have to go to someone and say, all right, 2 weeks, that's it. And it's a tough place to be. But he looked at it. We decided we're going to look at it from the perspective of this other guy, the guy that he had to let go, was miserable. He was doing a miserable job because he was out of his depth and he was unhappy to be there. So it was like, okay, let's bring him in. Let's shine up his resume. I'm sorry we have to let you go, but let's find a situation that's going to make everybody better. And that's exactly what happened. This other guy found a job out in the community that actually suited him a lot better. He's a lot happier now. And now he's got a loyal supporter in the community. This director that I was working with, it's like, well, yeah, they had to let me go, but I'm a lot happier. The way they did it was kind because it was in my best interest, and can't say enough good about it. So now he has that loyalty, not just within the organization, but outside the organization.
Yeah, I love it. And that's where the consistency, like you said, we talked about before, if that person's being consistent, now it's not just like, oh, I just turn it on when I think the most important people are around that'll see it, and then I'm like Jekyll and Hyde. I'm completely the opposite. We know a lot of people like that, but nonetheless, that consistency, I can see that it becomes, like you said, what you said earlier, it becomes a habit. So you just start doing it on autopilot at that point.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, studies show that most of us have empathy to some degree. There's a few that don't. The dark triad ones.
And some people are born with that part of it missing from their brain. And unfortunately, we hope they don't kill somebody or something like that.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But I mean, when you think of it, that most of us have it. So you have that as part of who you are. So now it's a matter of taking it as skill and practicing it and getting better. Just like Michael Jordan at basketball, right? Cut off his sophomore team. He could have said, well, that's as far as my talent takes me. But instead, he went and started practicing.
It's true. Absolutely. And talk about that if you like how empathy could play a role in enhancing our already skills that we are good at. And sometimes we just either undermine it or we get caught up in the things that we're not good at our role and duties. And how we can now be more conscious of focusing on what we're good at, or at least going to our superiors and asking them, can your role be adapted to more of the things that you're good at, so that not only that they'll get more out of you, but you're going to be happy and more content because that adapts to what you're really good at.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think that starts with self-empathy and being able to say, yes, maybe I'm in this position because they said I'd be a great manager, leader, whatever, but this is where my skill set is, or the opposite. This is where I excel. So now that I understand this, I've observed, reflected, I'm aware. Now I can go to my people above me and say, look, here it is. This is the proof. This is what I can do. And this is how I can really enhance the organization. And there's that outside perspective taken. I've taken the inside perspective and saying, look, this is where my niche is. And now you've taken the outside perspective, and this is how I can help you.
So true. I love that. Love that. Anything like else, like I know we said that, you don't have to do everything overnight. You start with one thing. You said start with self-empathy, which I always think is the best, because you gotta fill your cup in order to spill onto others. What would be some of the things that organizations can do to start to break the ice, to get buy-in, especially if it is coming from the top down? In this case, that would be the ultimate scenario.
Yeah. So without getting too far into the weeds, if I'm actually working with an organization and this is what we're doing, I actually have some tools that I'll bring in with them and we'll work with. And one of those is the Johari window, which it's 4 panes. And what you're doing is you're trying to take that perspective of the other. So each one, it's what I know about me, what I don't know about me, what I know about others, what I don't know about others. And basically what it is a way to break the ice and get people to start thinking, well, what don't I know about Fred? Well, what does he know about me that maybe I don't know? Maybe he's seen that I have these amazing skills that I haven't noticed. What is going on with my manager? What is it that maybe I haven't seen? Because when empathy really works at its best, it works in both directions.
Yeah.
That's what that kind of a tool allows you to start thinking about is how all these interconnections happen.
I love that because you think about in the workplace, I don't care where it is, it could be even in your marriage, it could be with your family, it could be anywhere in the world. It's always ineffective communication. We just assume and speculate based upon either our experience and previous beliefs that, this is why sometimes people say, I don't like that person. Well, do you really know them? Not really. Well, how can you not like them when you don't really, you're just judging them what you perceive them to be. So now what you just said with that model, it allows people now to see things for what it is. And now they get a better understanding of you based upon what they assumed and speculated before.
Yeah, absolutely. Now you start to see this as a 3-dimensional person and not just a series of traits that maybe you don't like.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And a lot of times people, I've had this happen to me once before. I swear to God, this happened to me. I'm a professional speaker and usually I get great reviews, but I remember I had a woman that was heckling me from the audience and I had shared some insights. I didn't, put her on the spot. I didn't say anything directed to her. It's just something I must have shared did not resonate with her for whatever reason. Lo and behold, I had an idea, that, okay, I can't control what she perceives. I'm just gonna roll off, kept on focus. I think that somebody had came up to me right after and they apologized for her, like on her behalf, even though she didn't do it. Yeah. That for some reason, what you were saying, certain things, your tone of voice and how you came across reminded her of her ex-husband. She saw me as her ex-husband, even though I don't think she consciously was aware of that. But that's what the other person said, and I thought maybe, well, that's a nice observation, but how do you know that's true? But now that I thought about it, I said, who knows? Sometimes she doesn't know me from Adam. I don't know her, and she already judged me that I was not, she didn't like me immediately.
Yeah. Yeah. Which you had nothing to do with that. It's not like you went in and, I'm going to go antagonize this woman. You didn't. That was not,
I didn't push back. I didn't get defensive, but nonetheless, these things happen. The reason why I can kind of see it because I've had other people that had a guy do that to me about 20 years ago, and I had triggered something because I was a recovering addict myself. I had a problem with sexual addiction and cocaine. This was years and years ago, and I spoke at an AA big group, and I triggered a man who was a psychologist at the time, and he, even though he wasn't drinking, he was engaged in other addictions that he didn't think were addictions. So he really wasn't sober. Yeah. He thought he was sober from the drink, but he wasn't sober he replaced it with something else. In this case, he was promiscuous. He was he was with other women, even outside of his marriage. Not that he was in relationships. They were just, it was a sexual addiction. He traded alcohol. And that, when I brought that up, it triggered him. He lashed back at me, and 2 weeks later he came back and he goes, I want to thank you because you alerted me. I'm not sober. I'm not sober.
Well, and let's back that up a little bit too, because now we're talking self-empathy, right? Because he took the time to step back and observe himself and say, oh, there may be something more going on here.
There's more going on. And for the first time, he thought it was, but he what he didn't address was the root cause to his addiction. And that's what I was talking about. Like, you can give up the substance of choice or the substances of choice, but if you haven't addressed the root cause to it, it just morphs itself into some other addiction that seems harmless, nobody talks about it. And a lot of times people might not even bring it up until at one point it will come out and be like, hey, wait a minute, God, he's eating way too much, or he's, drinking not alcohol, but he's drinking too much of this or whatever. It becomes like overindulgence in other areas just to kind of mask deep down what's going on at the root level.
Right. But like you said, he was falling into this, different addiction thing, but without even realizing it. If you'd asked him, he'd have been like, no, I'm, how this is all good. I've whipped this. But until he actually stepped back and observed it, he didn't even recognize what he was doing.
He didn't recognize it, and it just, that triggered him, and he just he apologized, and you don't have to apologize. I'm glad I had, maybe that, like I said, sometimes we don't want to hear something, but maybe later on it sinks in, and I'm glad that helped you. That's why I talked on this. I didn't come in there going, hey, where's that guy with the Russian accent? I'm gonna put this right on him. I didn't even know who you were at the time. And it's so funny because years later we're good friends. So go figure.
Yeah. But there it is, that little bit of perspective taking and being willing to understand, because you could have let it put you off, just like the lady, you could have let it put you off your game.
I could have let it get to me. I didn't take it personally. It was just something, like, it was a trigger. And you mentioned it before, that people have triggers. Sometimes people will get triggered. It's something from their past. It could be a prior experience in the workplace. It could be something when they were a child, how their parents talk to them that way or whatever. And now when somebody another peer says something, and it goes, how dare you talk to me that way? And it's like, what way? I didn't talk to you anyway. I was just trying to talk to you. And they take it a different way. It's just, So I love what you shared. As we get near the end of the show, I want to, if you can kind of connect the dots to what you shared today about the empathic leader and some of the principles, starting with self-empathy, why this is so important, why this is the time right now to start really taking this seriously and moving this forward.
Yeah. Well, I think we have to, because the more we deal with things that don't have empathy, like AI, like big tech, like big data, the more that the people can harness this are they're going to be the leaders that really move us into the future, right? Supply and demand. The less of a supply of empathy there is, the more it's going to be in demand. So that's kind of a lot of the idea behind the book as well, is that if this is something that people can harness, understand, it's active, it is skill-based, it's learnable, that there's, three, what I call the big three kinds of empathy that people really need to be able to lead not only everybody else, but themselves. And that's emotional empathy, which is the feeling one, cognitive empathy, which is all logical, and self-empathy, which is what we've been talking about. But that, now is the time to start instituting this, because no matter what, at the end of the day, organizations are about people. And this is how we connect as human beings. So without this skill, it's like trying to do it missing half of your brain.
Absolutely. Dr. Melissa, this has been such a wonderful discussion. You always bring a wealth of value behind your area of expertise, and this is such an important topic. I want to make sure that the listeners get even more value, and how can they get in contact with you, either on LinkedIn, through your websites, through your email, whatever you'd like to share with them, how they can get in contact with you, and anything you'd like to share with them.
Yeah, best place is my website, because it's going to have my social media stuff. It's got my TEDx talk. It's got a link to my book. And that is EQ and that's V as in Victor, IA empathy.com. And you can also catch me, my TEDx talk. We hit 85,000 views in about 3 months today, which is pretty exciting.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. And my book is up on Amazon. My podcast is called Empathic Leader. That's up on YouTube. And of course, the usual social media places, LinkedIn mostly. So
beautiful. We'll make sure everybody that information is also in the show notes. So again, we encourage everybody to reach out to Dr. Melissa. There's so much more she could have shared here, but with only a half an hour, we can only do so much, but she always delivers value. Again, let this conversation continue with her, reach out to her and connect. Thank you again, Dr. Melissa, for taking the time out of your day to be with us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. It's always just so much fun to talk to you.
It's been a pleasure, vice versa. And listeners, we want to thank you each and every week joining us here at Business Influencers. Again, we are committed to bringing in subject matter experts like Dr. Melissa in to help elevate you and your level of influence to the next level. Let that be starting with empathy now, learning to take care of yourself, be the example, be the resource as she had talked about earlier. Till then, everybody, have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you next week at the same time. Take care.